Peace. So I want to talk about trauma. And I say the word trauma a lot, and it's also being said a lot in the world now, but I don't think people actually know what healing trauma is. And so I'm going to give you an example of a trauma that I wouldn't even say I fully worked through this, but I recognize it and I am actively working through it. So, for example, I grew up in a household where my father physically and verbally abused my mom. So I watched her be beaten, cursed out, cursed at, spoken down to, called all types of horrible names. And that went on through the course of my childhood. I literally saw my mom many times, most times, cook, fix my dad's plate, bring it to him, hand it to him, make sure he was fed and everything that he need, refix his plate if he wanted seconds. And the whole time she be cussed out throughout that process. Like, you doing all that and you getting cussed out in the process of it, and you quiet and you doing it. So many young women that go through that as a child, they grow up and they also come to a place where they are being abused. So if their mom was abused, they enter into a relationship where they were abused. And I don't know the psychology behind that, but I guess if it's okay for her, then it must not be too bad and I'm going to stay. For me, it was the complete opposite. I told myself that right there could never be me. And I meant that. That has never been me. But I also overcorrected. So what I did was I adequated in my mind that no man is ever going to tell me what to do. I'm not going to submit to a man. I'm not going to be doing things for a man. I am never going to be in a place where I am going to be the weak woman. I am never going to be looked down as weak. And I lived my life that way. I even had situations in which I had jobs and there were men in authority over me, and I could not take authority for them. So I literally would tell a man, you don't tell me what to do. You tell her and she can tell me and then I'll listen, but you don't tell me. I was easily triggered by a man exercising any type of authority over me. And if a man happened to purposely be rude, I took it more strongly than the man actually meant it. So I also was in a relationship once I got into early adulthood and displayed those characteristics in my relationship. I did not want to hear what you had to say. I continually tried to let you know that you don't have any control over me. Submission was a horrible word to me. I didn't want to take any advice, any direction, any of those things. I didn't do things like fix plates, because when I fixed a plate and brought it to a man, it reminded me of what I saw my mom do. So I didn't fix no plates. So my point is that situation was my trauma. That was my childhood, inner child trauma that I was still dealing with, and that I never would have recognized I was dealing with unless I did the work on myself. So I started doing the work. I didn't recognize it and did the work. I did the work, and then these things started to surface and I started to see where they came from. So once I realized that those behaviors were damaging, they were self-sabotaging, and they were something that I was dealing with that had happened to me as a child, I was able to say, that's not the truth for me. I released that trauma in order to be a better woman. I released that trauma in order to love a man better. I released that trauma because I don't want it held up in here and causing damaging behavior for me, sickness for me, because trauma held on to does manifest as actual physical sickness. I didn't want those things for me. So I started the process of actually healing that. I say all that to say, We are all dealing with some type of trauma. And I'm just going to talk about childhood trauma in this video. We are all dealing with some type of childhood trauma from our childhoods that we have not healed. Now, you could have had a wonderful childhood, and it could have been a minor trauma that's not really affecting you in a major way in which your life is, thrown off by it. You could have had a situation where you had a good life, but my mama always worked. She worked all the time. She worked hard. We had money. We had things. She provided things, but she never spent quality time with us. Or my dad never spent quality time with us. Or it could be something huge as my dad molested me the whole time I was a child. But these are things that we dealt with them as a child. We grew up with them. We thought we were done because we grew up and we were able. But if you took that thing and you brushed it under the rug and you never ever dealt with it, then it's still underlying, and you're most likely still behaving in a way that displays that trauma. So that's going to affect you in your life and how you are manifesting, how you are creating, how you are behaving. And those things matter. So as I always say, do the self-work. Your triggers and trauma will become evident to you. When they become evident to you, if you're doing the self-work, it will also become evident to you of how to work on your issue. So for me, I had to actively work on those things. I had to actively say, this is not the woman I want to be. I had to actively practice submission. I had to remind myself that this is not that. You're not your mom. You'll never be in those types of situations. I had to actively do the work on myself to heal those things so that my life could be better, so that I could attract better, so that I was not holding on to trauma. And so another thing that was big for me, I was not passing those traits on to my daughters. I was not passing a lifestyle of single motherhood, a lifestyle of I don't respect men because men are so beautiful and they are to be respected. I was not passing those things on to my children. That meant so much to me. So, like I just told someone earlier today, we all have some type of trauma. I don't know what your trauma is. Do your self-work so your traumas, so your issues can come to surface in a way in which you can recognize them and you can work on them and you can heal them, because it's going to be extremely important in your elevation for you to recognize and heal that trauma so that you can be better and grow better and live better.